That night, when my friend thought I was asleep, turned into one of the most unforgettable moments of my life. Something happened that I never could have expected. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was one of those nights that felt suspended in time. The apartment was dimly lit, just a soft glow from my desk lamp in the corner and the faint blue flicker of the TV screen in the living room. Outside, rain tapped steadily against the windows, lulling the city into a hush, as if the whole world had slowed down just enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. I was curled up on the couch, pretending to sleep, one arm draped across my face, my breathing steady and slow. But I was wide awake. Every sound, every shift in the air, I noticed it all. Especially him. Daniel moved around the kitchen like he always did, half clumsy, half graceful, barefoot against the tile, humming quietly to himself. We'd been living together for almost a year, ever since college ended, and we both ended up working in the same city. Moving in together had felt natural. We shared the same humor, the same rhythm, years of friendship. At the time, it seemed perfect. What I didn't expect was how my feelings would change. Daniel was my best friend, confident, charismatic, effortlessly likable. Back in college, when I told him about who I was, he didn't even flinch. He just shrugged and said, "Cool. Still think I'm the best-looking guy you know?" And carried on like nothing had changed. Maybe for him it hadn't. But for me, everything had. When I moved in, I told myself I could handle it. That it was just a crush I'd eventually outgrow. But feelings don't stay buried forever. They surface when you least expect them, creeping into quiet places, like late nights in a silent apartment, when the sound of his laughter from the other room felt like the only thing keeping me awake. I heard his footsteps coming closer, the floor creaking softly outside the living room. I stayed still. He probably thought I'd already fallen asleep, wrapped in a blanket with the TV murmuring in the background. For a moment, I thought he would just walk past, head to his room like always. But he didn't. He paused. Not just stopped, lingered. His breath caught, just slightly. And then I felt it, the shift in the air, the weight of his presence leaning closer. My pulse hammered in my chest, so loud I swore it filled the room. The couch dipped as he sat down carefully. My thoughts raced, but I didn't move. I didn't know what this was, or why he was there. Then, I felt it. His hand, hovering uncertainly, before brushing softly against my arm. A light, trembling touch. My skin sparked under it, every nerve awake. For a second, I thought he might pull away. But instead, his hand rested there, warm, steady, like it belonged. "God," he whispered, so quiet I almost thought I imagined it. "Why do you make this so hard?" I didn't move. I couldn't. He didn't know I was awake. He sighed, deep, conflicted, heavy. For a moment he pulled his hand back, and I thought maybe that was it. Maybe he'd stand up, retreat, pretend none of this had happened. But then, he shifted closer. The warmth of him was just behind me now. His fingers brushed along my back, careful, hesitant. I wanted to turn around, to see his face, to know if this was real. But fear kept me still. Fear that if I moved, the moment would vanish. "I don't know what I'm doing," he murmured softly, voice unsteady. "But I keep finding excuses to be near you." My chest tightened. His hand moved to my hair, brushing a strand gently aside, then trailing down to my jaw with a tenderness I hadn't expected. "I wish I could talk to you about this," he whispered, his voice breaking slightly. "But I'm scared everything will change. And I don't want to lose what we have." He leaned in, close enough that I could feel his breath against my cheek. For a heartbeat, I thought he might say something more, or do something reckless. But instead, he froze, stuck. Somewhere between fear and want. Finally, his hand dropped back to his lap. And then his forehead rested lightly against my shoulder, not romantic, not bold, but as if he just needed to be near. "I think I feel something," he whispered, barely audible. "But I don't know what to do with it." And I lay there motionless, heart racing, the blanket holding in more than just warmth. The blanket was pulled up to my chin, my body electric and still. I didn't know what to do either. My emotions were a storm, hope, fear, longing, disbelief, all crashing together at once. His presence behind me felt grounding, yet unreal. The quiet hum of the TV filled the silence again. The rain had stopped outside, but inside the room it felt as if time had bent, suspending us in a space where nothing else existed but his breath against my skin, and the words he was too afraid to say aloud. Eventually, Daniel stood. The couch creaked softly as the weight lifted. I heard his footsteps retreat, slower this time, more hesitant. His bedroom door opened quietly, then clicked shut. Only then did I open my eyes, staring into the darkened corner of the room. My heart was still racing, my mind a whirlwind. I had no idea what it all meant, but I knew one thing for certain: everything had changed. And I didn't know it then, but the story was far from over. Something much bigger was still waiting to happen. Sleep never came to me that night. I lay curled beneath the blanket, replaying every second of what had just happened. Every word he had whispered. The hesitant touch of his hand. The warmth of his breath so close it felt etched into my skin. My body remembered the details even more vividly than my mind. And each memory pulsed through me with every heartbeat. When dawn finally crept through the windows, pale and blue, the apartment was silent. I sat up slowly, still wrapped in the blanket like a second skin. His door was closed. No sound came from behind it. I stood, stretched out my stiff limbs, and wandered into the kitchen. I wasn't hungry, but muscle memory guided me. I started making coffee. The warmth of the mug grounded me even as my thoughts spun in 1,000 directions. Had he meant it? Had he been dreaming? Or worse, did he already regret it? The moment had felt too real. But Daniel had never given me a reason to believe he saw me that way. He had always been the confident, easygoing friend, the guy who could joke about anything, walk around in basketball shorts without a thought. I had spent years teaching myself to bury what I felt, convincing myself that every accidental touch, every lingering glance, was just friendship. But last night? Last night didn't feel like a quirk of friendship. It felt like something cracked open inside him. Something he'd been holding back. I was still clutching the mug like a lifeline when I finally heard movement. The familiar creak of his mattress. The quiet groan of his bedroom door. My breath caught before I even turned around. There he was. Daniel stepped into the kitchen, rubbing the back of his neck, his hair a mess from sleep. He looked at me with a mix of surprise, and something I couldn't read. Something that made my pulse skip. "Didn't expect you to be up," he said, his voice rough with sleep. I tried to sound casual, but every word felt heavy. "Didn't sleep much." He filled a glass at the sink. "Me neither." Silence fell between us. Normally, it wouldn't have felt strange. But now it was heavy, dense, carrying too much meaning. His presence beside me made my skin ache, not from touch, but from the space between us. "Daniel," I said quietly. He turned to me. For a moment, his expression flickered, uncertainty, maybe fear. But underneath, something softer. He started, then broke off with a sharp exhale. "Listen, if I said anything weird last night." "You didn't," I interrupted gently. "But you did say something." And I was awake. His eyes snapped up to mine. Shock. Panic. And then vulnerability, the kind you can't fake, the kind that comes from carrying a secret too long. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I waited, giving him space. I couldn't speak for him. He set his glass down and leaned against the counter, his voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you were asleep. I didn't mean for any of that to happen." "But it did," I said softly, steady. "And you said it." He swallowed hard, dragging a hand through his hair. "I don't know what's happening to me, man. I don't know what any of this means." I nodded slowly. You don't have to have all the answers right now. But you felt something, didn't you? Last night. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. Yeah. The word cracked as it left him. Yeah, I did, he said. And I've been feeling it for a while. I didn't want to admit it, especially not to myself. He let out a laugh, dry, shaky. I mean, come on. You've known me forever. I've never been into guys. Never even thought about it. But lately, every time I look at you, it's like something shifts in my chest and I can't breathe right. The confession hung between us like a live wire, buzzing with heat and meaning. My face flushed, caught between disbelief and a flood of emotion. He stepped closer, just slightly. I don't know what to do with this, he admitted, his voice lower now. I've tried to push it away, but it won't go. And then last night, you just looked so peaceful, like you were dreaming. And I guess I got caught in it too. I set my coffee mug down, steadying myself, and met his eyes. So, what now? Daniel shook his head, a helpless smile tugging at his lips. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. But I know I don't want to pretend like nothing happened. Not anymore. His hand brushed mine, not a grab, not deliberate, just the back of his fingers grazing my skin. And I didn't move away. You don't have to have it all figured out right now, I said softly. We don't need to label anything or rush. But if this is real, I need to know you. Won't run the second it gets hard. I won't, he said instantly, his voice firm. I swear. I need time. Time to learn what this means. For me. For us. I nodded slowly. Okay. Then let's start with this, you're not alone. You never have been. His shoulders eased. The tension in his posture melted, replaced with something fragile but hopeful. Thanks, he whispered. Seriously. And then, without warning, he pulled me into a hug. It wasn't quick. It wasn't casual. His arms wrapped around me like he was holding onto something he couldn't afford to lose. His cheek rested against my head, and I leaned into him, breathing in the familiar comfort that was uniquely Daniel. I didn't know where this would go. I didn't know if it would last or if it would fall apart before we even began. But in that moment, standing barefoot in a kitchen full of morning light and uncertainty, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, hope. And Daniel, he was holding on just as tightly. His embrace was steady, almost desperate, like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I clung back without hesitation. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was charged, filled with unspoken questions, but also with something tender. Something that told me the line we had crossed wasn't invisible anymore. It was real, and neither of us could pretend otherwise. When he finally pulled back, just enough to see my face, his expression was open, raw, and a little afraid. I don't want to screw this up, he said quietly. Us. Whatever this is becoming. You won't, I answered without hesitation. For a long moment, we didn't move. His hands rested on my arms, mine lightly at his waist. The hum of the fridge was the only sound in the room, sunlight streaming faintly through the blinds. He smiled then, dazed, almost shy. I have class soon, he said reluctantly, as if he'd only just remembered that the outside world still existed. When you get back, I told him, we'll talk more. Figure this out. He nodded, lingering a little longer than he needed to, like stepping away might make everything vanish. And honestly, I was afraid of that too, afraid that once we walked away from this moment, we wouldn't find it again. But eventually, he did go. Hoodie on, gym bag in hand, a last look over his shoulder before he slipped out the door. The look lingered with me long after he was gone. The day blurred by in a haze. I tried to work, but every thought circled back to him, his cracked voice, the way he'd held me like I was his anchor, his words echoing over and over. Every time I look at you, something shifts in my chest and I can't breathe right. By the time he returned, anticipation had hollowed me out. He came in like always, keys tossed on the table, sneakers kicked off carelessly, but there was something different in his posture. He paused when he saw me sitting at the dining table. "Hey," he said, like it was the first time we'd spoken all day. "Hey," I echoed. He dropped his bag beside the couch and rubbed the back of his neck. "We should talk." "Like, actually talk?" I nodded and gestured to the chair across from me. He sat, leaning forward, fingers laced together. "I thought about this all day," he said quietly. "And I don't have it all figured out. But I know I don't want to be afraid of this. Of us." My heart thudded. "Neither do I." "I still don't know what it means," he admitted. "I've never felt like this about another guy. I'm not suddenly a different person. I still drink too much Red Bull, still forget to do laundry, still don't get half the shows you watch. But when I look at you," he broke off, shaking his head. "It's like I've been searching for something my whole life without even realizing it. And somehow, I find it in you." My throat tightened. "Daniel." He looked up, eyes locking with mine. "Last night scared me because I didn't mean to let it all slip out. But I did. And the more I think about it, the more I realize. I meant every word." I reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't hesitate, his fingers curled around mine like they belonged there. "You don't have to label it," I said. "You don't even have to understand it all right now. We can take this slow. As slow as you need." He laughed softly, his voice catching. "Slow might kill me." "Not slow," I said with a faint smile. "Just honest." Something shifted between us then. The uncertainty was still there, but the fear wasn't a wall anymore, it was a door we were both ready to open. He stood, walked around the table, and stopped in front of me. His eyes searched mine, asking silently for permission. I gave it simply by not looking away. He leaned down and kissed me. It wasn't long, not the kind of kiss you see in movies. It was careful, tentative, but real. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "That was okay?" he asked, voice low. "More than okay," I murmured. "We didn't rush anything else." "Not yet." The rest of the evening unfolded as it always did, takeout, a movie, laughter. But this time, it was different. He sat closer. His thigh brushed mine. His hand rested against my leg, fingers curling just enough to remind me he was there. And every so often, our eyes met, and we smiled, not like friends, but like something more. The craziest part, though, was still to come. When the movie ended, he didn't go to his room. Instead, he looked at me and said softly, "Can I stay here tonight? Just, next to you?" I nodded. No jokes, no hesitation. Just the truth. We lay side by side on the pull-out couch, a surface too small to keep distance. He curled closer, his arms slipping around my waist, and I leaned back into him. His chest against my back, his breath steady, the stillness between us full of something new. It was a beginning. I drifted into sleep with his warmth holding me, not knowing where this road would lead, but knowing we had already taken the first step. When morning light crept through the blinds, I woke to the rhythm of his breathing, his arm draped loosely around me. For one suspended moment, I let myself just exist there, safe, steady, close. But then he stirred, fingers flexing against my side as if deciding whether to pull away or stay. "You're awake," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. It sounded more like a question than a statement. "I have been for a while," I admitted softly. His breath hitched. "I didn't mean to, well, I guess I did. I just didn't know if that was okay." "It is," I whispered. "It is." He went quiet again, and then let out a long, shaky breath. "Good." It felt like time had paused. Neither of us moved, as if we were both waiting for something, maybe a sign, maybe just a moment to hold on to before everything changed. The silence wasn't empty though, it was heavy with all the words we hadn't spoken yet, all the feelings that had been quietly building between us. When Daniel finally sat up, he didn't look at me right away. His eyes stayed on the floor, his lips pressed tight, as though his thoughts were louder than anything he could say. "I keep trying to act like this is normal," he admitted, his voice low but steady. "Like I'm not lying awake every night thinking about it, about you, about what this means." I sat up too, careful not to break the fragile openness in his words. "You don't have to have all the answers," I told him gently. He turned then, his eyes searching mine. "But what if I want to? What if I want to stop drowning in this silence between us? I know I've been walking around pretending I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm barely holding it together. And it's not just confusion, it's because when I'm with you, everything feels clearer, and scarier at the same time." The honesty in his voice shook me. For so long, I'd wished he would open up, and now that he had, I realized how much he'd been carrying on his own. "You don't have to pretend anymore," I said softly. "Not here. Not with me." His eyes glistened, though he quickly looked away. "It's not just about being with you," he said. "It's about what it means if I do. It changes everything I thought I knew about myself. And that terrifies me." "Yeah," I nodded slowly. "But maybe it's also freeing." The air between us shifted again, warmer now, as if gravity itself was drawing us closer. He let out a breath and whispered, "I keep thinking about last night. How I almost didn't say anything. I stood outside your door for 10 minutes, trying to find the courage to knock. And even when I did, I only spoke because I thought you were asleep." A small smile tugged at my lips. "Then you were braver than you think. You spoke the truth when no one was supposed to hear it. That matters." He laughed nervously, rubbing his neck, but then his expression softened. The fear in his eyes was still there, but beneath it was something else, longing, hunger, the quiet ache of someone who'd been denying themselves for too long. "You make me feel safe," he whispered finally. "That's because you are," I replied. "With me, you always are." Something inside him gave way then, like tension finally snapping. He reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine, and I knew without him saying a word that he wasn't running anymore. He leaned in, slowly, carefully, and when I met him halfway, it wasn't hesitation that guided us, it was truth. The closeness wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was the quiet surrender of two people finally stepping into the light after too long in the dark. When we pulled back, our foreheads rested together, our hands still clasped tight. His voice broke softly against the air between us. "I've never felt like this before," he admitted. "Not with anyone. And it scares me." "I know," I said. "But you don't have to face it alone." His grip tightened around mine. "Promise?" "I promise," I whispered. And in that moment, it wasn't about fear anymore. It wasn't about confusion. It was about finally choosing each other, messy, fragile, imperfect, but real. For the